Becky mentioned coordinated access, which is basically, I mean, we could do a whole session on coordinated access, but the short of it is that it's a centralized system where we assess people and we try and determine the housing solution that's most likely going to end their homelessness. And we prioritize people because housing is such a limited resource that we try and do it in an order to get the people who are most vulnerable housed first and with the solutions that are the most complex and comprehensive, right? So one of the roles that Search fills in the system, and we work alongside the Beacon, is to assess individuals who are living out on the streets or experiencing homelessness, and then we navigate them into housing. And that could be lots of different forms of housing, but one of them is permanent supportive housing. So that is matched for individuals who are experiencing chronic homelessness. And so one of Search's partners in housing solutions is Temenos CDC. And so I'll introduce Eva Thibaudeau, who is the CEO of Temenos.
Thank you. I'm so happy. Thank you to everyone who joined today and is, taking an interest in this. As Alexis mentioned, Temenos CDC is the housing aspect. This is where, when all that pre-work has been done around identifying people, talking to them, working with them and getting all the paperwork together, where they finally come home to stay. And so Temenos was actually founded in 2006, and it was founded through St. John's United Methodist Church as its own, nonprofit, freestanding. But it was a response really to the problem that St. John's was seeing every single day. St. John's literally backs up to the Pierce Elevated, and every day, the staff and the parishioners were seeing the folks who were living under the Pierce Elevated and other places, around downtown, who were unsheltered. And back before 2012, when Alexis talked earlier about there being a real shift in how we approached ending people's homelessness, oftentimes it was survival of the fittest for folks who were experiencing homelessness to get their needs met. The system was not designed at that time to really go out there and try to work with the hardest to reach, as it is now. And so Temenos was formed to provide permanent housing for those folks who couldn't make it to the front of the line on their own. Since that time, it has been, I'm very excited to say, we've been able to become part of the coordinated access system, and we now work, and every single tenant in our buildings is navigated in through that coordinated access, meaning that they were triaged and assessed to be some of the most vulnerable and highest need folks, and that's who we house. Temenos has 3 buildings. We have about 140 units. We house single adults, so they're small micro units that have a small kitchen and a bathroom and a kind of living, sleeping area. So we've talked a lot and alluded to this magical beast called permanent supportive housing, which is one of the ways that people, especially the most vulnerable within our homeless system, which is one of the ways that folks are housed. And so this is a very unique, very specialized type of housing, but at its simplest form, basically you get a new home with a standard lease, the type that anyone else in the community would sign. You get property management, who in our case, because we are specialized in our 100% permanent supportive housing, you have property management who's really committed to retaining residents and giving multiple chances to folks. And then you add, and this is the real key ingredient that is what helps people stay housed, supportive services. And so we have on site at each of our properties, we work with Search, we work with Healthcare for the Homeless. We have office space on site where there's case management, there are nurse practitioners, there are peer specialists, there are licensed chemical dependency counselors, all sorts of folks on site where people are living to be there to really help end their homelessness and make it permanent. And so you can see some of our staff there. This was immediately post-COVID and the stay-at-home order. And our staff are essential staff. They are at the desks 24/7, maintaining the security and the safety of the residents and the properties. It's maintenance, it's housekeeping, making sure that, everything is sterilized and keeping running. As Sean talked about, we are still accepting residents during this time. And if you want to go back real quickly to the first slide, on the right-hand side is Adam. And he was navigated into one of our properties. This is our Knowles Temenos property. And he moved in just a few weeks ago and is getting acclimated, but after a very, very, very long stay on the streets. And so that in a nutshell is what permanent supportive housing is. Next slide. So pandemic hits. All of a sudden we had no phones, there was no testing, there was no food, we couldn't have visitors. Our supportive service staff were temporarily not on the property. And there was mass panic of our tenants. And so, we had to really problem solve and pivot to try to figure out how to work in this new space and in this new reality where we had 140 folks housed in our buildings. And, how do you manage that? And so some of the things that we found really early on were that while folks were able to, for example, access their supportive service case manager or healthcare worker via phone, most of our folks don't have phones. And if they do, they're the free phones. And so they have limited minutes. And so they didn't want to use their minutes always to, get their supportive services case management needs met. And so we went out and we got free cell phones and placed them at each property so that tenants could check them out so that they could maintain connection, with their supportive services. Folks, many of them, I would say probably about at least half of the folks in our buildings do not have any income, like 100% zero income. And because they're single adults, they also do not have access to SNAP, which is the food stamp program. And so with pantries in the area, food pantries, that is usually how folks access food, and places such as that being closed because they didn't have volunteers and because people couldn't walk in. And the few that were open, and most of the food bank places, were drive-through only. So that it was, touch-free, all very, very, very pandemic and, public health oriented. We only have about 2% of our population who have vehicles. And so without being able to walk up to places, we were seeing incredible food insecurity. And so we quickly got a Costco card. We got some changes in our grants so that we could purchase large quantities of food. And, we tried to make sure that people at least had some kind of subsistence food that they could survive each week on. At the same time, we worked with Search, and Search communicated with the food bank, and we had kind of a dream come true, which has been fantastic. We have, as a system, we have long recognized the food insecurity of folks living in permanent supportive housing. And the food bank really stepped up to do business differently. And every day since mid-April, the food bank has been delivering hot meals that we then can, if you can see in the lower right-hand corner there are some of the Search staff and volunteers that then we then put into, individual serving containers and are serving all folks at all properties. So everyone is getting a hot meal a day. It has been absolutely fantastic. And then we've also been able to get household boxes of food delivered for our residents. We also, you'll see we have a commercial kitchen at one of our properties, and pre-COVID, we used that kitchen to prepare 3 meals a day just for the residents of that site. We changed that, and we actually are now serving, it had been 15 folks who resided there. We now serve about 40 people every day, 3 meals a day, who do not have any other food options, and we're going to continue that. So, I think what we'll find going forward, and we could all probably speak to this, is that, there are practices that will change forevermore, and there are learnings that have come out of this that, have made our work better. And so this is one of those things that, that we'll keep doing. We also recognized that particularly at the beginning, the only way that people could get tested was if you had a car and could drive through, one of the city or county testing sites. And that was really concerning to us. Again, I, talked about how our folks don't have cars. And just like the rest of the population, they were scared, they were concerned, and many of them did want to get tested. And so we worked with a partner organization, Bread of Life, and we actually were able to bring testing to our places. And so you can see one of our test sites up in the right-hand bubble there. But we did walk-up testing, and we've continued to do that every Wednesday where people can walk up or drive up. And so we're trying to meet that need. It sounds silly, but if you think about your own life, I know that, I call the YMCA my mental health membership. And, that ability to work out and to be physical is really, really important to me. And I know that it is for many of our residents, and in particular, some of our residents in their 20s. When I was at the downtown Y in the mornings, working out and leaving, I'd see them coming to play basketball. Well, basketball indoors and in public is a thing of the past. And so, some of our young folks have just really, really been struggling. And so we got a basketball goal, and, we now have basketball, out in the parking lot. And, just to be able to be out there and shoot around, for one young man in particular has made a huge difference. As I said, our workers are essential workers. There are exactly 2 of us on staff who could potentially work from home or do remote work. Everything else is hands-on and in person. And so we immediately instituted hazard pay for all of our hourly staff, and have also taken this really as an opportunity and a time to look at what is a living wage and, what is fair and equitable. And so for the long term, again, one of those things that have come out of this, is really making some pay adjustments to make sure that we're valuing the work that our people are doing. And then we worked with the city, with the mayor's office, and with multiple partners to make sure that everyone has protective gear. So, that's both the tenants. I search, and Don Hall, who's in that lower right-hand picture there, who's a longtime searcher and good friend, colleague, work to make sure that every single tenant had at least one mask. And we, now that, masks are more available, we make sure that in all the common areas, we're asking folks, do you need a mask? Do you want an extra? We're throwing masks around like confetti, have a mask for a friend. But, really just trying to work to make sure that people are staying safe. So, when I kind of pull out and look at what are our big overall goals here? We are about safe, quality, permanent housing. Again, this is not a temporary solution. People can stay for as long as they want to remain tenants with us. We are all about tenant retention. We don't want turnover. Turnover in our mind is not a positive thing. If somebody leaves, we want it to be because they're going to a different housing option of their choice. So that means that we do a lot of eviction prevention. And so that's, when the eviction moratoriums came out, countywide, statewide, federal government, all the different guidelines, we really operate in that mindset on all days of the year, not just during a pandemic. So for example, we might have someone who vandalized a washing machine, in one of the laundry rooms overnight because he was drinking and got upset and decided to get in a fight with the dryer door. So, instead of saying, that's it, you're out, you vandalized property, you destroyed things, we're going to talk with the supportive services staff, and we're going to say, hey, look, we can't have damaging property, but can you work with this tenant to try to figure out a way to prevent this from happening in the future? And so we work really closely. Or if someone is having a hard time paying, supportive services might kind of come to the bat and say, look, this happened and this happened. Can you work out a payment plan with them? And so, we will do that. The question on the table is always, how do we keep this person housed? And if for some reason it absolutely isn't working, we work really closely to try to make sure that that person is moving into other permanent housing, not going back to the streets when they leave us. And again, I think you've heard this throughout all of our presentations, but collaboration is really key to making this work. You know, no one in this type of work should try to be a jack of all trades. We all have things that we and our staff and our spaces are especially skilled at. And we've really come to put trust in each other so that we really are ending unsheltered homelessness for all Houstonians.